How's everyone doing? Sorry, I am like 10 minutes late, which is later than I meant to be, but like the old saying goes, better late than never. Which I don't think is always true, but oh well. We'll, we'll get ready here. All right, so I'm going to give just a little bit of time for people to, filter in, get comfortable, get comfy, and yeah, we'll start very shortly. All right. All right. The news. We have some spicy news for today. We have some spicy news. So we're going to mix it up just a little. We're first going to talk about something I find interesting, something that we've talked a lot about in the past, which we're going to continue following. And then we're going to talk about the next Google service that's going to get canned. I don't know if you guys follow that a lot, but I do have my suspicions on the next Google service that's going to get canned. And then following up from that, we have our normal security. Now, after security, we're going to jump into another spicy topic before we get into the cloud news. Something that I kind of see both sides of. So I'm going to present both sides. I'm not going to defend either. I'm probably actually one of the least biased people on this topic. So we're going to talk about that, and we'll definitely. It might be in the title of this stream. So. A little bit later on, we're going to talk about our AI section. I have some stuff to talk about in the AI section that's kind of interesting. We have Cornell University released their Phi 1 language model, which is supposed to do very well. But one of the things that I wanted to draw our attention to was the human eval and the MBPP tests that they do. This is actually one of the reasons I myself want to do the AI games. Basically, I want the AI games to be the benchmark for these new language models eventually. Maybe in a year or two, we'll get the AI games to be that. And yeah, so we're and that's what we're working towards. But I want to show you guys those to just show you what people are working off of right now. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. I do have an interesting article or an interesting email about maybe how not to communicate to a possible DDoS. This probably goes along the lines of professional communication, especially if you think a company might be DDoSing you on accident. Which can happen. An accidental DDoS can actually happen, as much as you'd rather it not. All right. let's jump into it. So the first bit of news, the first thing we're going to cover, introducing the Rust Leadership Council. So I know that we've talked a lot about the faux pas of the Rust leadership, or the absence of a Rust leadership, and it seems that as of now, as of RFC 3392, there's going to be a change. Now, whether it's the right change, whether it's a good change, whether it is actually makes a difference, only time will tell. It is, in fact, though, a change. So what they're going to do effectively per this RFC and explained fairly well in this blog post, which I will post for you all, the Rust Council is going to be defined of elected people from the different top level Rust projects. So you're talking about crates.io, compiler, and infrastructure. All those top level projects are now going to elect one person to represent those. So you can see the elected people here from each one of those. So Mara Boss from library, release got Mark. Those were the people that were elected. This is what they're going to do and try to do. So this is the end. This is the end of the secret chat channel of the core team and the interim leadership chat that has existed, that completely failed to do their job. It's the end of the core team that can't be moderated and completely drove the moderation team to quit all at once. So maybe, just maybe, today, and more specifically June 20th, is a new leaf for the Rust project. Now, that being said, we will have to watch, and we will have to hold these people accountable for the things going forward. But at least now we have names of the people, and hopefully not secret interim chat leadership chats. So, yeah. I'm excited. They're at least doing something. That's actually what I called out the last time, was that the interim leadership had been active for almost a year and we had seen nothing come from it. So I'm hoping to see more activity in the future from these people and a little bit of accountability. Let's move on to security. Everybody's favorite topic is security, and that's what we're moving on to right now. So, well, that's the RFC. Oh, before we do that, Google's next target. You thought Google bought projects to nurture them, or did they just get them to, bury them? As Google Maps has added more and more of Waze's things, Waze's features to Google Maps, it seems like Google is gonna kill Waze. That's what I'm calling out. Google is laying off a lot of people from the Waze team. It's been considered that they were going to already deprecate and remove Waze, so I bet this is a good first step. Hello, Nighthound. How are you doing? I hope you're doing well. So now let's get into security after I just announced the next app to get Googled. I think Google is now, it used to be like go Google it. And now pretty much from this point on, you're going to I'm going to go Google the service. And that means you're going to shut it down. That's the new word for Google. So Microsoft, I actually reported on this last week. Microsoft had major outages in both Outlook and OneDrive, and they came out and said that they were hacked. They are talking about if there's anything that you need to do, although I didn't see anything in any of the articles this week that I was able to find that Microsoft said that there was anything for you to do at this point. But if you do use Outlook and OneDrive, you should be paying attention to this to see if there's any extra steps you need to take to secure your drives. I am trying to make the security section much more tight around things that I think would affect you, and so that is what I'm trying to do. I know that Outlook and OneDrive are pretty popular things to use. OneDrive maybe more than Outlook. So. Another warning came from the CISA. The CISA Cyber is aware of DDoS and DDoS attacks on multiple sectors. So if you're wondering, I'm going to post this in here. This is their thing. So there was several DDoS attacks that were launched. And they have steps to undergo if you think that it might be you before contacting and sharing. So, yeah. Very interesting. I thought that you guys would like this. A Chinese malware intended to infect USB drives accidentally infect. They say accidentally here. I think the air quotes need to be in there. It is also infecting network storage as well. Yeah. So be careful about Be careful about storage. I have always said this. Any type of mass storage you need to be careful about. And you know what you need to be careful about? Making sure that your storage doesn't come up on eBay. SSD missing from SAP data center turns up on eBay. Yep. Physical security is part of your security. So when you're thinking about security of your application and of your data, sometimes you have to think about, can people walk up and take it out of our data centers? All right. So something that I think I actually want to cover here is repo jacking, and I want to cover it with you all. If you don't know what repo jacking is a real thing and can affect you and your company. And I think people need to be more aware of repo jacking. Maybe I actually need to make a video on repo jacking. Because repo jacking is actually really easy to do, and it actually comes from a really nice convenience. So what happens is, if you rename your repo, like Eddington, we might change Project Eddington into a different name or something like that, because that's just kind of its code name. When we come up with its final glorious name, we might rename the repo. And what GitHub does for us really nicely is it actually does a redirect. So anybody that had Eddington in their Git, it will get redirected. Now, the problem here is this. If somebody comes along and decides to use that, they can. They can create a new user and use Eddington. And if we rename our org, which is what you really need to be careful about, they can use your old org name and Eddington, and they can actually, this is how they jack the repo, is basically then they can inject whatever code in anybody's pipeline that is pointing to that old URL. So it's really important, if you're renaming your repository, and specifically your repository and your organization, that you do it with great care. I would actually say redirects should be shut down if you do your org, because it's a very big deal. And that was really it for security. The next part of this is something a little bit exciting, something you guys are going to like, a little bit off the beaten path. It's yeah. It's a little off the beaten path. Everybody here knows what RHEL is. So RHEL, what a lot of people call it, is the Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And RHEL used to have this thing called CentOS, and a lot of people used CentOS. I go back and forth from CentOS and CentOS. A lot of people call it either way. And this was kind of the how this ecosystem worked. So if you look here, RHEL existed here, and RHEL is open source for the most part. RHEL is built. It is basically just the compiled artifacts of the Linux kernel and then their software that they distribute. So their package management. So they basically, when you buy a RHEL subscription, you buy the ability to get access to the packaged solution. You're not buying the code. The code is mostly all open source. Now, what CentOS was basically a repackaged RHEL. It was compatible one-for-one with the RHEL version. It was the exact same thing, just repackaged and completely open source. You didn't have to pay for it. So I'm going to say it was free. You didn't have to pay for it. RHEL is still open source. I will still make that argument, and this is why I said I will argue both sides. RHEL is still open source. Their packaging you just pay for. Their package management you still pay for. Their package solution. What really makes RHEL is what you pay for. They're not charging you for the kernel that they package. They're not charging you for that type of stuff. But it is really a paid solution. And CentOS was basically the other thing that you get when you pay for RHEL, not just access to their packages, but you also get access to their support. So you get a lot of things when you pay for RHEL, but it is also expensive. It's expensive, I'm not going to lie. So CentOS was kind of well, we don't really want to pay for RHEL, but we want it to be compatible with RHEL just in case we move to RHEL, or we want to say that our application is compatible on RHEL, but we don't want to pay for RHEL, and we want to distribute our application. CentOS was great. Well, Red Hat made a change about 2 years ago, I think, where Red Hat said, CentOS, instead of being binary compatible, what binary compatible means is that they are the exact same thing. Instead of CentOS being binary compatible, we're going to make CentOS the bleeding edge, which means basically if you're on something like Arch, or the non-long-term support of Ubuntu, that's kind of what CentOS became. It became the test bed of RHEL. It's no longer binary compatible. It's no longer the same thing. CentOS became this future test bed. And this is a problem because it means that you can't depend on this in production. It's designed to be broken. It's designed to fail. It's designed to change quickly and move forward, whereas RHEL is designed to be slow, designed to be stable, designed to not. So it broke it for the use case that people were talking about. So because that happened, Rocky and Alma came along. And Rocky and Alma said, we will be binary compatible with RHEL. And the world cheered. There was parties throughout the galaxies. Everything was good. Well, Red Hat decided that they didn't like this. They didn't like this right here. And to be frank, the reason they didn't like it is because they worked hard on RHEL and they want paid for RHEL, and they feel like these people are taking their money. I'm not sugarcoating it. This is what their reasoning was. Whether you disagree with that reasoning, that's fine. I don't actually necessarily agree or disagree. I actually am very much torn on this subject, so we'll get into that, because I think anybody that takes a hard stance one way or another maybe fails to see both sides. Now, I would contend and argue that RHEL has gotten themselves in this position themselves. If you go and look at Ubuntu, for example, who, Ubuntu has 100 derivative clones. Everything from Pop! OS from System 76 to Xbuntu and Tubuntu and I don't know. You can go on and on and on. They're all derivatives of Ubuntu, which itself is a derivative of Debian. But you don't have this binary compatible. Do you know why you don't have a binary compatible enterprise Ubuntu? It's not because the source isn't available. It's not because it's not possible. It's not because there's a paywall. The reason these don't exist for Ubuntu is because I can go download Ubuntu server right now, and I can use it for enterprise right now if I wanted to. You know what I can't do? I can't go download RHEL. You can get this no-cost developer subscription, which allows you to use it on one computer with no ability to make profit with it, which means it's even interesting how you might use it, because if you're trying to make something for profit, yeah. Otherwise, you need to pay for a subscription. And yes, it's a subscription. It's not a one-time fee for the OS or anything like that. It is a subscription to their package management solution, to their updates, to their whatnot. So this is why Ubuntu doesn't have this ecosystem. So what RHEL did was RHEL cut off its source code. Now, per the distribution requirements of the licensing, you're actually allowed to do this. You only have to distribute your source code with paying subscriptions. And it turns out that Rocky can't actually make a paying subscription to get access to that source code because that subscriptions has a terms of service they're not willing to accept, which puts Rocky and Alma in kind of a weird spot. They're not willing to accept the terms of service, and without the terms of service and paying for a subscription, they're cut off from access of the RHEL source code, which means they cannot make this binary compatible release. Now, just so you don't think that I am misled, they came out with a blog post very much describing why they were doing what they were doing. Now, their very first release got a lot of backlash, and so Mike released, and Mike is a longtime Red Hatter, well before IBM bought them, released a article, released a blog post. Whether you like it or not is up to you. Now, he reaffirms, we will always send our code upstream and abide by the open source licenses our products use, which includes the GPL. So they're reaffirming that they are always committing their code, the code that they write upstream, which is good. And he basically says that, now, whether you think Rocky is doing it for their own profit, so I disagree with some of this. I don't think Rocky does it for their own profit. I don't see people getting rich off of Rocky Linux. It's a lot of volunteers. That's like saying the people that support Rust are doing it for their own profit. That's a little tenacious, to say the least. So I disagree with Mike, but you know what? Mike's been under a lot of stuff, and he's been called some horrible things. Like, some of the things people are saying are absolutely horrible, and if you're one of those people, you need to stop. We have to pay the people that do the work. And that's true. Open source has a very hard issue with this. It's a hard problem. And they actually pay a lot of people. You know what I want to turn your attention to? I want to turn your attention to the people that work in Kubernetes. One of my good friends, I'm not actually going to name him on stream, but he does a lot of work. He just released a fantastic blog article on securing your containers in Kubernetes. He released a tool to secure your Kubernetes clusters. That's all completely open source. And he works and is paid for by Red Hat. I actually know a couple people at Red Hat that do this, that work diligently in the open source communities to make them better. And they're paid for what they're doing. So Red Hat has to make money somehow to pay them to make your open source communities better. I have not seen an open source company with the impact Red Hat and VMware have. I'll include VMware in that. Those two companies do more for the upstream communities than any other company that I've seen. I'm not saying that they've done everything right. I'm not saying that everything he said here was even right, because I believe this was an egregious statement that he should redact. I will have this argument with Mike directly if he'd like. But at the same time, they do have to pay for it. Now, is this the right move? Was there another way that they could do this? That's a hard question. I'd love to hear from you guys what you would think is a good way to do it. Obviously, Red Hat and IBM are companies that need to make money, if nothing else, to pay their employees. Now, yes, they have stakeholders, they have people like that. I think the monetizing open source question is a very difficult one. I think it's one that we shouldn't make light of or even point fingers at. It's hard. It's hard. So what are your guys' thoughts? How many followers did I just lose? I know I defended Red Hat to a certain degree. I don't think that this was necessarily the right move. Ashish. Oh, look at that. Oh, no. Oh, no. You have this notification up in the top left corner, but guess what? You can't read it because I don't think we updated it. You got a personalized follow message that is personalized. And see the small black text up there? There is text. And I can tell you, it was generated by an AI just for you. We wrote it on stream. And I am sorry that I failed to update this to the newest code that's actually legible. That's actually legible. So I'm going to read it out loud because I actually have it. The application's running here. So I can actually tell you what it said. In the realm of cyberspace, Ashish 45363, a valiant warrior, sought purpose. Fate intertwined their paths with you, a wise sorcerer. I am a wise sorcerer. I'm glad that the AI knows that. Shared wisdom and knowledge, a bond forged in the fires of shared interest and mutual respect. I respect you, Ashish. Together, you embarked on quests, conquering challenges, and vanquishing foes. Through trials and triumphs, Ashish pledged loyalty. You pledged loyalty. The wording that the AI comes up with is a little weird. I realize you didn't pledge loyalty. Forever bound as your new follower, a steadfast ally on your digital adventures. Anyways, thanks for following. Sorry that the notification was a little hard to read. You'd have to be an AI to actually read that. But it's a fun thing that we've done on here. So anyways, I want to reach out to you all to just say, I think... So Ashish, if you're new to this channel, we program and write AIs and stuff. So we have our own GitHub followers and subscriber messages that are generated by an AI. So you get a personalized storage. Eventually, you'll be able to read and follow your story on my website. You can't do that quite yet. We haven't gotten there. But yeah, so each follower gets their own story generated by an AI. It's kind of a Dungeons and Dragons. There's a little bit too much of an allegiance. The AI is a little bit crazy. It was supposed to be a new follower, but on Sundays, today, I cover the news that has gone on. And today we were covering, throughout the week, we program a lot. We do a lot of Rust and Golang programming and a little bit of Python when we do some AI stuff. Today we were talking about the Red Hat, I'm going to say the Red Hat fiasco. Because we cover a lot of cloud news, AI. We just finished talking about security. After security, we're going to go into cloud news. So we're going to cover the things that have gone on in Amazon, GCP, Azure, and all the other clouds. And then we're going to jump into the AI news about things that have transpired throughout the AI industry. And then we'll jump into some just random blog posts and articles and things that happen throughout the internet. So I guess to wrap up, my Red Hat rant, my Red Hat thing is, it's a hard problem. And I don't think people verbally throwing stones at Red Hat is the right way to go about it. I think we need to come to the table with Red Hat as a community, because it's a hard problem monetizing free open source stuff. And to be fair, Red Hat does a lot in the community. I know several people that work for them. I'm not going to name names because I don't want them to get hate mail, because most of their jobs is making the open sources communities better. They don't contribute to the core Red Hat stuff. They literally just contribute to the open source projects in Kubernetes and containers. And so, yeah. And they get paid by Red Hat to do that. So, anyways, that's the Red Hat drama. That's what happened with Red Hat. What are your guys' thoughts? How should Red Hat go forward? Is Rocky a good thing, or does it hurt Red Hat? I generally think Red Hat shouldn't have done what they did. I think that Red Hat should have tried to find other ways and reached out to the community. I think another problem with this is this article, this change was written on June 21st and kind of came out of the blue. Nobody had time. They didn't release it for comment. And this is what I think Red Hat as an open source company should kind of do. Release these things for comment and get feedback on them. You don't think Red Hat subscriptions would be enough? You're right. Maybe it's not enough. And if that's the case, if RHEL subscriptions aren't enough, then they do need to do something, and that's their right to do it. I don't think you want to alienate people, which I think this worked to alienate. Especially with some of the wording of this article. So like, RHEL are those who want to repackage it for their own profit. Alma Linux and Rocky don't make a profit off of it. So there was a little bit of offensive words here, but they had also been pretty much attacked. They were called evil, and these are actually in public tweets and stuff. Like, these people have been verbally abused. And so I get it that they come off a little offensive. It's hard. It's hard when you're getting verbally abused online not to come off a little offensive on the offense. Yeah. Now, they have more than RHEL subscription. You can talk about their OpenShift container thing. There's a subscription for that too. They have other products that they sell and support that they sell for open source code. So there is other ways that they make money. Yeah. So I guess I want to know your guys' thoughts, because I know that the internet is completely angry. Again, going back to this is the nice stuff. If you've been following it at all, being called evil was the nicest thing that happened to them. And I think that that's not driving them to a solution. If you're going on the offense like that, you're driving them to be defensive or reaching back out on the attack. And really, what I think the open source community wants is to be brought to the table. I think that if they had released something like this here as a, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about how Alma and how Rocky integrate into the community, or even if they had to make a terms of service for the source for Red Hat, for Red Hat to, or for them to not be able to make profit from it, I think the community could have come behind them a little bit better than it did. But again, I don't want us to throw out the good for the bad. I don't want to throw out, I can go through a ton of the things that Red Hat has contributed to the open source community completely free of charge, making it a better and safer place. So I think we need to come together as a community. Join the Discord if you'd like to chat about it. I'd love to chat about it because I think monetizing open source is one of the hardest problems facing the tech industry right now. People want to work on these things and people want people to be able to use them for free, but we also like to support ourselves as well. Doing that is really, really, really hard. A lot of open source companies have just utterly failed because of it, or closed source their stuff. Let's talk about, the MongoDBs or the I want to say OpenSearch, but that's now the Elasticsearch. Those companies did it in a way that because they couldn't pay for their employees without doing it. So I think we have a problem and we need to talk about it. Yeah. All right, let's talk about cloud news. I think we've beat a dead horse hard enough. I'd like to hear back. I'm gonna work on a video because I think too much anger is out there about the subject. Too much is going on, and I get it. The rug was ripped out from Alma and Rocky. Now, Rocky did release a very interesting way of that they are still obtaining the source code. They're getting it through publicly available containers that were released that they have access to. But it won't take long for Red Hat to lock down on those as well if they need to. So I think those are short-term solutions for Rocky. But I think the long-term solution is actually coming to AWS, or not AWS, but coming to Red Hat and getting everybody to the table to talk together. So let's talk about AWS, everybody's favorite cloud. I know everybody loves to hate AWS. It is also the most mature cloud out there. Let's talk about what's new happened in it. Amazon EC2 Instances Connect supports SSH and RDP connectivity without public IP addresses. This is actually a pretty cool thing that comes out. So in the past, you'd have to have a public IP to connect to your EC2 instance. And you could do like a Bastion jump host in the past to do this connection for you. With EIC endpoints, customers have remote connectivity to their instances in private subnets, eliminating the need for a public IPv4 address subnet with that jump host or anything like that. So yeah, you could either publicly directly connect it, or you could do the Bastion host that has that jump in the middle. Yeah. See, previously customers had to create Bastion hosts, SSH, blah blah blah, and they've completely made that so much simpler. So I think this was worth announcing, and I think it's worth knowing about. Announcing Livetail in Amazon CloudWatch. So basically just an easier way to see real-time logs in CloudWatch. So if you're a heavy CloudWatch user, CloudWatch is kind of expensive, but so is Datadog. So Woohoo! There you go. Announcing the general availability of AWS Database Migration Service Serverless. I hate the word serverless. I want us to stop using it. Basically, it automatically provisions and scales migration resources to make database migrations easier. That's cool and everything. Serverless doesn't help me understand that. It's just a service to migrate your database. There we go. So if you're looking to migrate your AWS database or to an AWS database, it's gotten easier. Amazon ECS now launches tasks faster alongside tasks with prolonged shutdown. This didn't make much sense to me, but I actually think that this is a very interesting. Like when I first read this, I was like, oh, moving on. But I opened it anyways, and I was like, I guess I need to understand the problem space just a little bit more before I completely ignore it. So, ECS, or Amazon Elastic Container Service, now enables faster task launches on container instances that have tasks with prolonged shutdown. This enables customers to scale their workloads faster and improve infrastructure utilization. Now, what they're really getting at here is the ECS, the Amazon Elastic Container Service, is basically Kubernetes as a service without Kubernetes. It's their fully managed container orchestration service that really is fairly easy to deploy and manage large container applications as long as you're not running the Kubernetes API. And basically, this speeds up task provisioning. So it allows you to scale easier. It allows you to do those types of things faster and easier. So it's worth knowing if you use ECS because it now works a little bit better. Amazon introduces the CSI driver for Amazon FSx for OpenZFS. So if you're trying to use OpenZFS, and AWS has created a CSI driver, so it should work in your Kubernetes clusters pretty much directly. So this works with both the Amazon, the EKS, the managed clusters, as well as self-managed clusters on EC2, which allows you to manage your file systems for stateful sets and things like that on these managed clusters pretty quickly and easily. All right. Google. Besides shutting down Waze, everybody's favorite thing, I'm telling you, Waze is going away in just a little bit. You might not believe me, but it's true. Google, this first one is a little surprising, and I'll let you in on a little bit of insider knowledge. Google's cloud managed service for Prometheus now supports Prometheus exemplars. Now, Prometheus exemplars have been supported in Prometheus for a long time, so you might be wondering why they don't just say that the managed service for Prometheus is, upgraded to a version that supports it. And the reason being is Google's GCP's managed Prometheus isn't actually Prometheus. It is a compatibility layer on their own thing that they built, and thus it requires them with new features like this to actually add it to their compatibility layer themselves. This is one of my biggest complaints with GCP, and why I don't actually like the Google Cloud is because nothing they offer as a service is the actual thing. It's like their compatibility layer over something that might be marginally better for them to maintain, but isn't the same thing that I want. So that's why this is out. Now, this is a big deal because exemplars are really good at providing this correlation between different metrics in your metrics. So if you're running like any type of large scale tracing and metrics and logging, these exemplars are going to be super useful. Especially if you're trying to pinpoint a root cause of latency or something like that. Also, another really thing is if you're having like some really high tail latencies and trying to debug that, exemplars can be massively helpful. So I think this is really worth noting that this exists here. So if you are using Google Managed Service for Prometheus, it's definitely something to look into. All right. Other than this, there is this blog post for it, so I'm gonna release that to the masses. There you go. We have introducing the Hive BigQuery open source connector. That's right. The Hive BigQuery open source connector has been released. So if you work on big data solutions architectures, BigQuery or Dataproc teams, we talk a lot about customers who are interested in migrating all or part of their data warehouse from Apache Hive to BigQuery. So basically what you're wanting to do is if you're wanting to move from Hive into BigQuery, they have a connector to do that for you. So if you're looking to do that, if you're looking to hand Google a lot more money, it's there. It works for you. Go ahead and use it. As far as Azure, I didn't see a whole lot of stuff in Azure to talk about. I was looking through their stuff, and really we got into last week really quickly, and yeah, didn't really see anything worth of note. But we're not done with the clouds yet. I know you're thinking, well, we went through the 3 major clouds, and there's nothing really that exciting about Cloudflare. I know Cloudflare did have Welcome to Speed Week of 2023, but I didn't find anything that exciting about their Speed Week. So what other cloud could we be talking about? That's right. One other cloud. That's Oracle. Oracle announces the database for ARM architectures in the cloud and on premise. So if you've been wanting to run your Oracle database on ARM, you can now do it for Oracle 18 or 19C. 19C. I am not paid by Oracle. I don't actually run Oracle, but for those of you who might use Oracle, which I'm pretty sure nobody in my community uses Oracle, they have made the commitment to ARM. Now, an interesting note here. Oracle also made another statement 2 days prior, or 2 days after this announcement, talking about how they could, in fact, drop AMD 64. Just basically the architecture that has run most of the internet for the last 20 years. I don't think they're going to do it anytime soon. Get out of here, Nighthound. None of OCI. OCI is the open container. Gosh dang it. I hate this. OCI. You know why I hate this? Nighthound is bringing this up because he knows how much I hate that they called it the OCI. And do you know why OCI rubs me the wrong way? Nighthound does. It's the fact that see this name here? Oracle, a sponsor of the Open Container Interface, or the OCI. The OCI. Long before they had their Oracle Cloud, they had the OCI that Oracle supported. There you go, your knowledge history. Anyhow, let's move on. That's really it here for the clouds. And now we have some AI news. The first good part of AI news that we have to go into is the fact that two things. First, I've gotten some feedback from my AI games to not only make them better for next year, but hopefully make our coding AIs better as a whole. So that was really cool. I am looking forward to hopefully collaborating with a couple of people that make these AIs. And hopefully next year's AI games are not only going to be better, but this community as a whole could help improve coding AIs for everyone. The other thing is something that I have called AI poisoning, but not the poisoning that other researchers call. So AI poisoning is classically this thing where you purposefully feed an AI bad information or data. It's an attack that people make. And so that's classically what AI poisoning is. And now I I called this AI poisoning because I think of it as AIs feeding other AIs bad data. So I still think it's a subset of AI poisoning, but it's almost a self-poisoning. AIs, especially these large language models and these neural nets, require astronomical amounts of data to be trained, to weight those nodes and do that. And I'm working on. I am actually starting a new YouTube channel. I'm going to post both videos on my old channel and on the new channel, but I'm going to do more like documentary things on like exposing how Bitcoin, blockchain, AIs work. Kind of like a science-y channel with more like making it for people that are introductory to those things. Anyways, that being said, I am working on that. For these AIs, they require that. And I have said that a problem we're facing with AI is that AI is now written, by my calculations, more text than humans have in the entire history of humans. That's kind of scary to think about. But AIs have now written more content than the history of humans. But the problem is, and we saw this in an example at Facebook years before, if you feed the input of AIs to other AIs, their quality goes to garbage, absolute garbage. And the problem is, there's so much content written by AIs, we don't even know what's written by an AI anymore. So AI models feeding on AI data may face death spiral. Another one, AI's trained on other AI output. I called this. If people would just listen to me a little bit more, I called this a year ago. The problem is that people are going to find it very hard. And honestly, this is where these super large models have to go away, because when ChatGPT was originally trained, it was trained on everything. And this is why it was such a large model. But they could do that because everything was generated by humans at that point. And now, I actually think there's going to be companies that actually generate content by humans that's actually looked over and made to be quality content, and they're going to sell those data sets because it's going to become so important that you don't just accidentally train on another AI's input. So that's what's happening here. Yeah. Now, I know that we've been doing the AI games, and people have wondered why we're doing the AI games. Well, we're doing the AI games because of Infection 1. Infection. I'm sorry. I can't English. I cannot English. English is difficult, and yeah. Okay. Let's get back into it. Now, Inflection 1, Pi's best-in-class LLM, was released. Now, you can read through this, and you can kind of go through and see how they categorized how well their AIs did. So there's a bunch of different tasks. And I've been studying a lot of these different tasks for the AI games, and yeah. So for comparison, a human expert scores an average of 89.8%, while an average human scores 34%. So I score around a 95% on these tasks. And they're claiming that they achieve greater than 85% accuracy, or close to, somebody of a little less skill than I have. But when we actually use these AIs, and they were comparing to GPT-4 here, and GPT-3, when they were comparing them, when we actually use these AIs, it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like they're close to what I can do. It just doesn't feel that way. And I found this article. Your AI coding assistant is a hot mess. And I couldn't agree more at this point. And the really great point here is he actually gives a good example of something that I have seen happen myself. So he wrote some code that he said he's done a lot, would take him about 2 hours. It only took him about 30 minutes with the coding AI. And then he spent another 3 hours debugging, or 2 hours, I don't remember, debugging because ChatGPT had accidentally inverted a greater than or equal sign. And it's actually very hard when it's generating a lot of stuff. It looks right, but you also didn't write it. And so in the end, it actually ended up costing him time and energy instead of saving saving her time and energy like it was supposed to. And this is what I found as well. I think that they're possibly useful, but they're also not as revolutionary as you might expect. And the problem is they don't actually understand code. And this is why I need to do this introduction to neural nets and everything, is what made these large language models work and work so well is basically they write one word and then they say in English, what would be the next word? What's the probability of the next word being this? And that's basically what they do. And it works really well, but it also means that they don't actually know what the code is. And, some people like Cody are working on this, trying to make it understand what's good for code. But right now that doesn't exist. So if you look at these, so Phi 1, which is what Inflection here made, if you look through the research for Phi 1, you can see these things relating to human eval and MBPP. If you don't know what human eval and MBPP is, they're actually some open source projects. And the AI games eventually are going to look a lot like some of these. And basically, these are problem data sets. So the MBPP is the mostly basic Python problem data set, which has a bunch of Python problems that probably I can solve in Python. They're pretty easy. And the human eval is one that was written by OpenAI, which is another data set, that problem solving data set that is a benchmark. And that's what they're judged on. And so anyways, I'm just trying to spread how these things work and knowledge. We probably need a video on how these are actually tested and why I think the AI games are actually different than this, because these are very sterilized and the AI games are very not sterilized, which is kind of the point. Okay. In other news, in AI, Facebook launches human-like AI image generation model. They also launched, I didn't bring up the article, but they also launched a voice emulating AI, which basically allows you to emulate voices, which is maybe a little bit scary on top of some other stuff, but they released that as well. And those were really the big newses of the week for AI. I'm interested in trying Inflection's Phi 1 dataset, see how well it does, and yeah. So there's another little piece of hot news that I found. There was a post, and the post title was WebAssembly runtimes will replace container-based runtimes by 2030. And I want to understand this. I feel like everyone is pushing this way, and I am just missing the I'm just missing it. I don't understand why. So when you look at something like this, they'll talk about a tight security model, fast boot time up, scalability at the edge, much smaller footprints, portability across environments. What is not true about a container? Now, you might say, well, a container doesn't really port across to Mac OS. Well, screw Mac. And they run them in VMs anyway, so the portability is there. much smaller footprints. I don't actually see that if you actually package a container properly, that a container has a larger or smaller footprint than a runtime, because again, these need a runtime, whereas containers don't, unless you're on Mac OS, and then screw Mac. Scalability at the edge, I don't understand that argument at all. What makes WebAssembly scale any better or worse than a container? Very fast boot up times. Again, I don't see that as a difference from, these are like the advantages, but I don't know that this is an advantage compared to a container. Tight security models. I don't see this being any different than a container. In fact, the container model is enforced by the OS, whereas with WebAssembly, it's enforced by a runtime on top of the OS, and so far has proven to be more leaky than containers. Now, containers are not the perfect security. They are not the perfect VM replacement for security. You can look at gvisor and projects like that. And don't get me wrong, I'm inclined to believe that I'm wrong, because I see so many articles like this. The fact that Docker is supporting WebAssembly, or trying to, the fact that, and be a WebAssembly runtime, I just don't see it. So I'd like you to prove me. Help me see. So if you see any articles that you think would elaborate that and make that comparison better for me, please share it in Discord, please tweet it at me or whatnot, because I really would like to understand better why people think that containers don't solve these problems right here, these very problems. Because so far, that's all I've seen that they do. Crafting a better, faster code view. All right, so I found this to be very, very interesting. This is a very technical blog, one that we're not commonly seen by GitHub itself. And I would encourage people to read it. Now, I'm not a good front-end developer. Let me throw that out there. I'm not a great front-end developer. You have all seen me do it live on stream, and it's not pretty. But there's a lot of problems that overlap. And the cool thing here was basically code view. Basically, your code view in GitHub would load all of the code, and this is they're simulating the viewport. And the old way was this full list, and because of that, it required a lot of time to load. And the new way is this way, where they just load a couple records on either side of the viewport, and it increases for very large files. It increases the load time drastically. And so they talk about how they did it, how they are working on it, and some of the problems that still exist. So they did improve the viewport findings, but they also have issues with it still. So anyways, I thought this was, I already sent it. My bad. I sent it again. Go read it. Let me know what you think about it. And we'll move on. All right. My next article is about how not to look like a jerk. When your service comes under attack, it's very easy to lash out, or suspected attack. Now, the thing is, when you call people malicious attackers, when you call them, let's see, yeah, let's just get into it. I don't know how to explain it. Let's just get into it. GMP servers are there's a lot of classical C tools hosted on those. And this was sent out by the leadership. The GMP servers are under attack by several hundred IP addresses owned by Microsoft Corporation. This is fine. Was true. Although attack was not the right word. It wasn't actually an attack. We do not know if this is made with malice by Microsoft, if it's if it's some sort of mistake or other cloud provider customer attack running the attack. Again, you need to look at whether it's an attack or actually acceptable requests. The attacks target the GMP repo with thousands of identical requests. The requests are this is kind of a little bit of speculation, as it turns out. The requests are clearly chosen as to cause heavy system load. So then they say that they're firing off IP addresses and yeah. So GM servers under DDoS attack from Microsoft. The thing is, Microsoft wasn't DDoSing them. As it turns out, GitHub Actions were trying to pull. So a script in FFmpeg builds project pulled content from there. So they pulled the C tools. And so this is an issue, but he sends another email basically saying that it's Microsoft's problem. Even though it's actually just poorly written GitHub Action scripts, which is actually maybe the moral of the story here is think about how you're treating other people's stuff. Now, Microsoft said that there was nothing wrong happening and that people were using it in a non-malicious way, that the build that was causing the problem was literally just trying to build it for a bunch of different platforms at the same time. So yes, they spun up like 50 different workflows, and this happened to go on like 3 different workflows that tried to build it for different platforms happened, and thus that is what caused it. Go had this same problem. Go modules are the worst. Let me tell you about it. Go modules are the worst, and Go modules would classically DDoS packages. So this was a problem because Go modules was DDoSing SourceHut and their Git repositories. So this has happened before, and I again, I want to encourage these people to come to the table, because just attacking the other person isn't going to bring them wanting to help you. I think Microsoft should work to help these people to avoid this type of thing. There might be something Microsoft can do with the GitHub Actions. It would take time, engineering work, to make sure that a service like this doesn't get hit. It turns out that GMP is hosted on just 2 servers. So it's not actually that hard to DDoS 2 servers, especially if the request that you're asking for is a big, long request, like downloading the source code for a C project. So really, it becomes quite easy when you think about it in those terms. Maybe there's something that Microsoft can do. I don't know. But yeah, so that's what's happening. That's what's happening. And that's it. That's all I have. That's all I have for the news. I don't have an article to react to. I was kind of thinking about doing that to Redhat, but I threw that in the middle. How did you guys like the AI games? Was it good? All right. Well, if you disagree with something I've said, if you'd like to join the Discord to prove your point, show how I just don't understand the world, please go ahead and do that. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining. I have appreciated your guys' comments and your feedback and your participating in this. I'll have to make sure that I update my GitHub bot or my Twitch alerts bot, because we did make a change that fixed this issue where you could actually read. And yeah. Otherwise, I'll see you guys actually quite a few times this week. I'm planning on trying to stream, maybe even once a day for this week. So not Monday. Monday I'm busy, but all the other days. We're going to get a lot done on Eddington, maybe a little AI stuff too. All right. I will see you guys later. Have yourselves a fantastic next week.